Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Speaking of public health emergencies, yesterday, Capital Daily and Burnaby Beacon published a story about the reality of how COVID was spreading in our schools in 2021. While the story the Provincial Health Office and the government wanted to tell did not match what was actually happening. Can the Minister of Health explain to the public what happened?
Minister of Health.
Well, Honourable Speaker, what's happened throughout the pandemic is outstanding leadership by our Provincial Health Officer, and here on Vancouver Island by our Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Henry and Dr. Stanwyck, have done an outstanding job. What's happened in British Columbia is that in schools in particular, schools stayed open in British Columbia, providing health and educational benefits for children that are incalculable, Honourable Speaker. We have the best record, Honourable Speaker, of any jurisdiction in the country because of actions of Ministers of Education and Minister of Health, but mostly the actions of teachers, Honourable Speaker, the actions of parents, the actions of students, Honourable Speaker, who did an outstanding job. There's a reference to an email, Honourable Speaker. There's a reference to an email from Dr. Stanwyck, Dr. Richard Stanwyck, now retired, and Dr. Henry, Honourable Speaker, that said that COVID cases during spring break were going up, which was the pattern we had seen in winter breaks as well. In other words, transmission was less during school than it was during break periods. What Dr. Stanwyck recommended is that we remind people to stay home when they're sick, something that we've been doing since February of 2020, and something we doubled down with when we became the first legislature in Canada to pass sick day legislation by the Minister of Labour.
Leader of the third party supplemental.
Speaking of doubling down, Honourable Speaker, astonishing. For those who didn't read it, here are some quotes from the article that was published yesterday. The Provincial Health Officer's own advisor, including Dr. Stanwyck, warned her of, quote, daunting spikes in school exposures. And yet, Dr. Henry wrote to her staff, quote, we need to be able to give some data that supports what we're saying, i.e. that transmission in schools is low. We have a narrative and we need the data to support it.
Yeah.
She then told the public over and over again
It is outrageous.
that transmission
Totally outrageous.
in schools was low, denying the reality that teachers and parents were experiencing in their real lives over and over again, gaslighting. And all the while, what was happening? A study was being co-authored by the PHO herself. And now we know that 70 to 80% of children and youth have been infected with COVID more than any other age cohort in BC, and that between March and August of last year, spread among kids was 92 times higher than what this government was reporting. My question is to the Minister of Health.
Let's hear the question, please. Members, let's hear the question.
My question, wow, these guys are desperate. My question is to the Minister of Health. In light of this information, how can we trust his word and the word of the Provincial Health Officer?
Minister of Health.
Well, Honourable Speaker, I think British Columbians think, the world thinks, that we have an outstanding Provincial Health Officer. Honourable Speaker, Honourable Speaker, perhaps I'll let opposition have its discussions. Thank
Continue.
you, Honourable Speaker. The Leader of the Green Party quotes Dr. Stanwyck, who is referring to a spike in COVID cases during spring break of 2021. And then she says the response from Dr. Henry was the one she reported. That response was an email from December the 23rd, Honourable Speaker. I just think that, Honourable Speaker, that to imply that one is a response to the other is inaccurate. It's inaccurate, right? And I suggest, Honourable Speaker, not worthy of a question in this House, Honourable Speaker. Not worthy. Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, the email from Dr. Stanwyck came following spring break, and Dr. Henry's advice, Honourable Speaker, continued to be what it should have been, which is stay home when you're sick. In December, at a time of high contact tracing, the advice continued to be, we briefed on the same day the email was put out, and the advice is, as it continues to be, that people need to be careful and stay home when they're sick. It's a time of contact tracing, and seeking out more information on that is not unreasonable. Honourable Speaker, Dr. Henry has consistently provided her best advice, and the suggestion that she did otherwise is simply incorrect. Does that mean that she's right every single time? Of course not. This has been an evolving pandemic that's challenged health officers everywhere in the world. We have had a level of service from Dr. Henry in terms of transparency to the public that is second to none, and a level of advice and guidance that has benefited the people of BC.
Thank you.
And you can go to any grocery store or any place in BC and you'll get the same answer. Dr. Bonnie Henry is outstanding.